Good afternoon, all. The Nancy Guthrie kidnapping. New evidence? Does it change this investigation? How strong is this in this piece of new evidence, as they say? And I have a little thumbnail up on the screen of the black glove. Is this the smoking gun? You would have everyone believe that the way the media is reporting on this. Is this really the smoking gun? I really pray and hope and pray that it is. I hope it leads right back to the kidnappers, as it takes anywhere from 2 to 3, 4 days to return the evidence on it, whether it's DNA, hair fibers, or it's connected in some way to the vegetation near the house, which someone else suggested. But it certainly is not. I sort of made that thumbnail tongue in cheek. It certainly is not the smoking gun, but the media would have you believe that it's the smoking gun. So the major development in the kidnapping of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, and it's important. For the first time, I don't know if it's the first time that investigators have physical evidence directly connected to the suspect. We don't know that. A black glove, possibly worn by the masked individual captured on the Ring camera, has now been recovered. And that changes the trajectory of the case, if it in fact does belong to that person caught on the Ring camera. Because up until now, this was largely a video-driven investigation and a digital investigation. Now, there is some forensics. So a quick reminder, folks, if you're looking for real crime insight, not YouTube theories, this channel's different. I'm a retired NYPD homicide sergeant, and on Police Off the Cuff, we analyze cases the way cops and prosecutors do. What matters, what doesn't, and what the internet gets wrong. If that's the perspective you want, subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment, it's experience. And I'd also like to remind everyone that Police Off the Cuff podcast is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe network. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your cup of tea, your cup of coffee, hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the Off the Cuff zone, the Police Off the Cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me today, I bring out the big guns, and I have retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney at law. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
Mike, I'm glad I have someone that's not as excitable as me, as someone that's cool and calm and collective like you.
Yep.
Just nice and steady. Anyway, I also have coming straight out of Brooklyn, and I can't promise you that he's cool, calm, and collective either, or steady like Mike Geary, but retired NYPD detective Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you for having me, Billy. And I think it's like a nice balance. There's you, there's me, and then there's Mike. It's kind of like, high, medium, and low.
You're 100% right. Take the leave the gun, take the cannolis. That's our motto, right? Anyway, a lot of things are happening, but nothing is happening, right? And that's the way I look at it, because I think you got to sift through all of the media hype and realize, and I'll put again up on the screen, what everyone is telling us is the smoking gun. This glove is going to break the case wide open. I don't see it like that. And I really hope and pray that this glove is connected and it does identify someone through DNA, hair fibers, skin fibers, anything like that. But every time they change direction, every time they do things perhaps that should have been done a week ago, and now we're 12 days into this, right? Everyone's jumping up and down like they reinvented the wheel. And I don't think they reinvented the wheel. I think they're doing investigative checklist stuff, procedures that should have been done a week ago. So to me, that is not giving me confidence. It's making me a little more suspect. Is like they don't know what direction to go in. Mike, I'm going to give you this because I needed to get back to the even keel again. Mike, your comments.
Yeah. And look, Bill, it is possible that glove may be a smoking gun, piece of evidence if it has trace DNA in it. And if the person who had it is a criminal whose DNA has been uploaded into CODIS. Without that, then you have to go the investigative genetic genealogy route, which is going to take months. So, and I doubt you're going to be able to get a fingerprint, depending on what's inside that glove. I doubt you could flip that glove inside out and get usable print. If you could, then it would be fantastic. But, let's not get our hopes up too high. But it's significant if it is connected, because it gives you a point to say, why is it here? Is it out in the middle of scrubland, or is it like next to a curb? It appears it's out in the woods a little bit. And that would give you a starting point to say, let's bring in the dogs, okay? Cadaver dogs. Let's bring in the dogs. Let's bring in some dogs with the basset hounds, whatever, with the big noses, and sniff around and see if you could find something. Because
Mike, I think you mean bloodhounds. Basset hounds go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the really good ones. Yeah.
The dogs with the big ears and they're bloodhounds. They have a very acute nose and they can smell things from. Okay, that's what we're looking for. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I just when someone in the audience may cast that, and what are you going to do with a basset hound?
I know golden retrievers and German shepherds. I don't know anything else, but it could possibly be a really good big break-in case, because it'll give you a location where possibly a body might be. But that search, it should have been done a while ago. Maybe it's not too late. We'll see.
Phil, I'm going to load you up with a couple of things. Okay.
Go ahead.
We're on the same sort of road here. One of my big critiques here, and again, we don't like criticizing police, but when we see things glaringly wrong, we have to comment on them. First of all, this crime scene was never secured. Maybe it was secured for one day, and then the powers that be, and I believe it was Sheriff Nanos, opened it up. Huge mistake. The other thing was, and I said it right away, get the press 500 to 1,000 feet back. They do not belong on the property. That's part of the crime scene. They are getting in the way. One of my favorite quotes, and you can say this is Canon's law, C-A-N-N-N-N-O-N, not C-A-N-O-N, which is the law of the Catholic Church, double N, is that the press can be your best friend or they can be your worst enemy. And you have to, as a law enforcement agency, you have to use the press. Don't let them use you. So a couple of things. They did not secure the crime scene. Everyone's trampling all over it. And the crime scene also could be out in the foothills here, because we don't know. There's so many things we don't know yet. We're just taking them for granted because of what we're being fed. We may be being fed misdirection. So I don't know if you can undo mistakes like this. Phil.
Yes, I think that you hit the nail right on the head. The crime scene should have been better secured right from the jump. However, we know that there was some missteps in the beginning, but as early as a little while ago, I saw a live news feed from Nancy Guthrie's home, and the reporters are just a few feet away from the front of that home. And earlier there was a tent set up and some forensic examination. And again, the reporters are so close to the location that they were able to zoom in on some of the equipment that the law enforcement office, the forensic team was utilizing. One of them was a chart, a height chart, which I believe they went into that vestibule to try and figure out the exact height of the person that's captured on that video, and perhaps examination of the blood stains. They also had some type of a video monitor, a video equipment. It was described, and there was pictures of it on the news just a little while ago of the chart and of this particular video apparatus. And it's described as a high-tech video capture machine. So with that said, what it does is you have the media reporting on these things, and then it runs with the conspiracies, and then they open up law enforcement for criticism. This is day 12 of a very serious, high-profile kidnapping investigation, perhaps something even more dangerous than that. It could be, God forbid, and we hope it's not true, a homicide investigation. And when you have these videos and these pictures and you're sending it through cyberspace and through, cable news and the media, you get a lot of conjecture, you get a lot of conspiracy theories, and you get criticism of law enforcement. Now, I know it's day 12 and they're just coming out to do what we believe is a height chart in the area. They want to narrow down the exact height of the perpetrator that in this video that you're seeing. These are still photos, but it was taken from a video. So they want to have an exact height, perhaps weight, and maybe even something as close as an age on the perpetrator, maybe even a race. To me, he looks like he's possibly white or Hispanic, unknown because of the ski mask, obviously. But with all of that said, the media, as I said before we went on the air, they should close off the block, both ends, with patrol uniform police officers on both ends, and you allow people that live in the area to go into their homes, obviously, and keep the media back. What it's doing, it's just creating another form of a blockade or conspiracy theories, and it just kind of gets in the way of the investigation.
100%. From the chat at Frangie7484, they are declaring these gloves identical to the ones in the video. Really? You can know that. You can guess it, like it looks similar or consistent, but you can't know it from the video. At Frangie7484, who is giving you that information? Not law enforcement.
Right.
The press is. So, they are creating drama. And that's one of the things, and believe it or not, Phil, I, and Mike speak to each other off the air. And one of the comments Phil made, which I thought was really important, was, they need to do another press conference.
100%.
Because there is so much misinformation out there. And one of the things I said to Phil, I go, yeah, you know what, Phil? They need the FBI to get together with the local, and they got to keep Sheriff Nanos off the air. He does not belong on the air. They have to have a spokesperson that's a public relations person. Type out like 15 or 20 things, and this is what we're going. This is the direction we're going in. And don't take any questions. Hand that out to the press and let them know that this is preliminary. All of the information we've just gave you is subject to change. It can change in a minute. It could change in an hour. It could change overnight. But this is what we're looking at right now. This is what we have so far. Because other than that, what we're getting are interpretations from I don't know how many news stations. And I've never seen so many talking heads, guys that, I thought that weren't even around anymore, are going on all these news stations. And they all have their own opinions. And it's all conjecture, Phil.
Bill, Bill, the last press conference that we had was over a week ago, and today the sheriff's office put out a statement: more detainments likely to come in the future. Are you kidding me? That's a statement. We need an update. The family is owed the update, which I'm sure they're getting privately, but I think it's going to lower the amount of conspiracy theories, lower the amount of conjecture, lower the amount of rumor. Like you said, Billy, they could come out with some points. This is the things that have taken place in the last few days. This is where we are with the investigation. I mean, you can be specific, but you don't have to release too much that it can compromise the investigation. I think that it doesn't have to be done every single day, but in the last week since the last press conference, a lot of things have taken place, a lot. Let's get an update. Come on. It's not fair to the family. It's not fair to the public. And I think it's going to stem all the conspiracy theories and conjecture. Look at what that last comment was. They said 100% it's a match to the glove that was seen in the video. We don't know that. Nobody knows that. The only way we will know that is if we have the perpetrator and his DNA is on that glove that was found. Then we know it's an exact match. Until then, we cannot say make statements like that. Does it look similar? Yes, 100%.
Grateful 11.11. Thank you for the $10 super sticker. I have become quite irritated with this case, so much so that it's really difficult to continue following. Seems a lot like theater work. Are any of you seasoned gentlemen believing your eyes and ears? Well, I will be the first one to say that has a background in homicide investigation that I am baffled too, right? I can tell you I don't have a clear picture of what happened. I know what to do. I know what investigative steps to take. I know how to keep going with this, but I don't have a clear picture of what the hell happened here. And you know something? Do the police, does the FBI have an obligation to tell you? No, absolutely not. You always hear the press say, oh, we want transparency. They don't owe you transparency. They don't owe you anything. But as a result, when they don't give a lot of information out, the press simply makes things up. Mike.
Bill, we saw this. You guys remember the Koberger case? Originally, everything was really tight-lipped. It was really controlled by Chief Fry out in, Idaho and Moscow, Idaho, and it was really careful. There was one hiccup at the very, very beginning with the mayor, but he got off the stage real quick. But everything was tight-lipped. But it doesn't stop, I think, content creators from trying to make up something. We heard that it was the food truck guy, it was the bartender, it was a former boyfriend, it was frat mates, and it was the Cali drug cartel. We heard all kinds of crazy rumors. So it's going to be hard to stop the rumors because people will just make stuff up. But the problem is it does mislead many people in the public to think that something is A when it's actually non-existent. And so, the idea with the glove, as you and Phil said, we have no idea if that is actually the glove. We don't know. It's a lot has to happen before we can definitively say it's the glove. But people will run with the story and mislead the public. And that's a disservice to the public. But you gentlemen are right. There needs to be a controlled statement with certain facts told, and then we don't get into some sort of therapy where we're talking to the press for answering all kinds of questions like it's an interrogation. No, put out the statement, talk to the family privately, but just let the public know that no, that has not been established yet, or this has been established, to cut out all the nonsense, because that hurts the public's perception and confidence in law enforcement.
100%. Mike and Phil, that glove is very important. If it's the glove,
right?
If it's not anything, it's a piece of garbage that they found, right, off the set. So it only is important if it is the glove. And for those that asked in the chat, in the thumbnail I have here, no, that's not the same glove that they had on the media. I made a thumbnail with it. I didn't take that from the glove that they're transmitting out there. So just so you know that it's not the glove, it's a glove. Facts matter. 8258. Thank you for the $20 super sticker. Are they not securing a home now because it is admitting their colossal mistake in giving future defense ammo? I just cannot fathom why else they wouldn't secure it. Apparently at Facts Matter 8258, they have finally secured it. There was a tent up near the front door. Prior to that, I saw news media people, or I've seen pictures of the blood spatter on the step that they had to be right on top of it to get the picture they got. That is crime scene 101. Not to do that, not to allow the press to walk over the damn crime, or anyone else, not just the press. That's ridiculous. Not only do you need crime scene tape, you need police. You need bodies there to say, hey, you, get out of here. Hey, you, move out. We've all seen fire trucks, right, where it says stay back 500 feet. That's what they need to hear. Stay back 500 feet and enforce that by some type of barriers. I want to play this from Fox. This is James Gagliano. He's an actually very knowledgeable talking head, a retired FBI supervisory agent, West Point graduate. I know he's going for his PhD at St. John's University. Let's listen to, I know he has a lot of experience, and let's hear some good thoughts on this.
Yeah, Supervisory Agent James Gagliano, live outside of Nancy Guthrie's home. So one of the big questions, James, a lot of us have, what are the points of entry? We saw that at one point in time that investigators were on the roof. It would appear that the exit location was the front door because that's where you see the blood splatter. But where else could the suspect had entered into the home?
So, Lawrence, I'm going to take a look at this as a former FBI SWAT team leader. And so when we do a site survey on a potential location where we're trying to make entry into, and what are the things that I would see that would be difficult to make entry? Because remember, if you're a bad guy trying to get inside, or if you're the good guys going to make a rescue, you want to find the path of least resistance. And look, much of the architecture out here, obviously with the ties to Mexico, much of the architecture is Spanish or Latin American type. And on the front door, and I've looked at that front door, you can see it, over my shoulder here. It's right behind me. It is a thick wood, hickory, oak type door. It's very, simple and synergist with the locality here. And in front of it, there's something that we call a rejas. And what is a rejas? It's a Spanish word. It's like ornate wrought iron grating, and usually they're put over windows or doors. And what do they allow? They allow for ventilation in or out, and they're also for security. Well, Mrs. Guthrie has one on her door. So that was an additional layer, and why this individual, this perp, this suspect, decided to go there to disable the Nest camera instead of, and our intrepid drone team has been out here and they've taken great drone footage from high above. You can look at the entire property. There's an outbuilding back there. There's a pool in the back. There are multiple points of entry that you could get into very easily. In the back of the house, there is a back door that's got like 9 panel window panes in it. You could have easily broken one panel, reached in your hand, unlocked the door, and gone in with nobody noticing. So why the suspect went to the front? We obviously know that Mrs. Guthrie was there at some point in time, because we know that the blood spatter is there and the DNA came back to her. It really boggles the mind. This case gets confounding. And again, investigators certainly know more than I do. But as I look at this, and if I'm thinking about it from the good guy perspective trying to get in, or the bad guy perspective, I don't understand why that front door would have been an option. You could have gotten into and out of that house, avoided the surveillance from that video camera on the front door, and brought her out the side where there are no surveillance cameras, and had a car there to take her away. It boggles the mind.
James, does it show you that she evidently won when she was dropped off by, we assume, the son-in-law? She went in the garage. So that means, I would assume, you go into the garage because the front door is locked. You make a choice. It's easier to hit a button than it is to maybe fumble for your keys. Would you assume the same thing?
I just want to say something here. Now, we're getting the information that she came in through the garage, and that's from her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, right? Who is considered, early on, someone put it out there that he was potentially a suspect in this case. And I'm not saying that he is, but the other thing is, so it's coming from his mouth that she went into that way, right? He's a witness. Is there video of her going through there? The answer is no. We know that the garage door opened because there's a timer that shows at what time it opened. But do we 100% know that that's how she entered? Mike.
Yeah, but we don't. We assume because we have some objective number, 9:54, the door goes up, 9:55, the door goes down. We believe that, but we don't have actually, because of its technological, ability, but we don't really have any sort of video of her in the house. We have one person talking. We don't have any other person saying it. No one else saw her in the house from outside. Doesn't seem to be any phone calls to her that she made on her phone that we know of. 15 minutes later, that may be traced to being right in the house. We don't have that information. And early on, as you and Phil know way more than me, you have to take what the witnesses tell you, and it could be very wrong in terms of what they think about time, space, place, and that sort of thing. But so it could have started off on a faulty first step, thinking about where she was, when she was, and what she was doing wherever she was. So yeah, and Tommaso, and everyone else in that family who had any sort of contact with her or the ability to be in that area, opportunity to be in that area, has to be considered a suspect, no matter who they are. They could be Joan of Arc, they could be anybody, they could be Mother Teresa. For a short period of time, they have to account for their their location and get some sort of alibi. So it's nothing personal about him, but he's just happens to be the one who last saw her alive, we believe.
Phil, hold your thought because I have a very specific question for you. Grateful 11.11, thank you for the $10 super sticker. Thank you for your honest comments and answers to my question. This is why I come here and listen. Your combined years of experience is A++. This case spins my head, and I blame the talking media heads too. Well, thank you. Phil, first of all, as we know, witnesses, they lie. They lie. They don't all tell the truth. So the way you challenge the veracity of a witness is by interviewing other witnesses that can challenge that witness's veracity and see and somewhere get the truth. But if Tommaso is the person saying, I dropped her off at this time and she went through the garage door, and we can check that because the garage door opened at XYZ time, is that necessarily the truth, Phil? And how do we challenge that?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought it up, because here's how it goes. You interview Tommaso, obviously last person to see her alive. He tells you, I dropped her off. She went through the garage. What's the detective's job at this point? Corroboration. You want to corroborate that statement. Now, they get the timestamp from the garage door going up and going down at that time. That's a little bit in his favor. Perhaps there's video when he left the house with her in the car. Perhaps there's video along the way, the route that they took. They'll probably ask, how did you drive to the location? What route did you take? Check video cameras. Now you see her in the car. Now they're going to say, what's the credibility of Tommaso at this point? Do we believe him? In my opinion, based on what we see, it sounds like they do believe him that she went through that garage. We won't know for sure 100% unless there is a video of her going in through that garage. But the veracity of his statement is definitely got to be corroborated. And once we have that corroboration, detectives will be comfortable. Listen, we know that there's a task force going on. In a task force, in the morning, everybody gets their assignments. At the end of the day, everybody comes back and we discuss it. I call it spitballing. And then we go from there. And then they perhaps get ready for the next day or the next tour. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? So this investigation has got a lot of tentacles right now. With that said, there was probably a discussion about his statements. If they catch him in this much of a lie, he may go from a person of interest to a suspect. But so far, perhaps, I mean, I don't know. I don't have access to the case folder. It looks like everything is checking out with regard to his statements. And sometimes there are inconsistencies that are just minor. A time could be off by a couple of minutes or things of that nature. But I think that something like this, they were able to
let me just stop you for 1 second, just so our audience knows this. 3 people can see the same exact thing,
right,
and see it differently. So it doesn't mean they're lying. It's just perception. And one of the least reliable things, believe it or not, is eyewitness identification. And that happens to be a fact that has been tested by science. So just so, Phil is talking, he's a detective that's interviewed thousands of people. But, as I said, 3 different people can watch the same exact thing and come up with 3 different conclusions. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, Billy, you hit the nail right on the head. It's the perception. Now, I've been in tussles or fights or whatever, and it might have felt like 5 minutes, but it was only maybe 30 or 45 seconds. And then if you take an average citizen, you ask them to recall some specific incident that happens, and they might say, oh, it was 3 or 4. Meanwhile, it was seconds. So like you said, Billy, 3 different people view the same exact incident and they give 3 different versions of it. But we account for things like that. Sometimes specific details of an incident or recollection and interview a witness, we expect them to be a little bit different. You'll never expect 3 different people to tell you the exact same set of circumstances when they're recalling it and you're doing an interview.
At Lori Bly, the 6635, what is wrong with this investigation? It's been so botched since day one. Lori Bly, I wouldn't say it's botched. I would say it's a very difficult investigation. If this was just the local police working on it by themselves, I might be a little suspect. But you have the FBI in on this too, and other state agencies. So they're putting a full court press on this. They're using all the resources they have. I wouldn't say it's botched. I think it's a difficult investigation, and you don't always get the truth immediately. And what are they relying on to give them the truth? They're relying on digital evidence, forensic evidence, eyewitness evidence, physical evidence. And right now, none of those things are all pointing to the same thing. And one of the things, the most concerning about this is that we have an 84-year-old woman kidnapped, still missing. And this is day number 12. So Nancy Guthrie is still out there. And I don't know if she's still alive. And I think the family, of course, wants to believe, and we all want to believe that she's still alive. But 12 days going by in a kidnapping is quite a scary thing. And the expectations that she's still alive, are quite optimistic. I want to go back to James Gagliano. We'll just spitball on what he said.
And would you think that a woman, an 84-year-old woman, would always be sure to keep that front door locked? And going in the garage, isn't that a further indication that it was locked? And then you wonder, did you break that door off the hinges? Did you pick? I don't know of anybody that picks a deadbolt lock. Maybe you do. What does that tell you?
Yeah, well, Brian, and we don't know how that garage door operates. Is it a key code pad?
Right.
Is it a traditional key? Was it left unlocked like sometimes people do? I can't imagine an 84-year-old woman reaching down and lifting that door up. It was probably an automatic garage door opener. Maybe she could have had that too. And here's the question too. Did the perp follow her into the house? But then it begs the question, why would he go back around to the front unless there was a vehicle waiting and that was going to come at a prescribed time, or he was going to message somebody to pull up out front to bring Mrs. Guthrie out. And he wanted to make sure that the Nest camera didn't pick up the vehicle approach. Again, I'm completely befuddled by why you wouldn't have gone through just a number of first floor windows that don't have the Rehas on them. They don't have that ornate grates over them like you see on many of the houses here, and why you would choose the front door unless he thought he could coerce her or trick her, some kind of ruse to get her to open the door. But when you're standing there dressed as he was, she's not going to open the door. So these are all the conflicting fact patterns, trying to figure out how this was. What I don't understand is this, and I'll close here. Why haven't we learned yet if forced entry was the means of entering the house? And why did law enforcement initially state that and then quickly walk that back? I think that's a key piece of evidence here. And I don't know why. I've thought about this, why they haven't released that.
Right. We all have the.
So again, James Gagliano is a retired FBI agent. They don't owe it to anyone to release that. But it would make the true crime community and the broadcast community a little happier if we could have the real way that the perpetrators entered that house, because we don't have that right now. Lula Morocco at Lula Morocco. Thank you for the $10 super sticker. Cannon panel, the FBI released footage edited. They took 2 seconds off the footage. Suspect puts his right hand in his pocket, pulls out something, 2 seconds cut, moves to door. Nobody noticed, not one. Well, you can add me as not two, because I didn't notice that either. And look, the FBI can do what they want with this video footage. It's invaluable evidence. But look, when that first came out, I was thinking, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and they're going to have someone in handcuffs. And we all thought they did. When they said, we have a person of interest, hooray, hurrah, hooray. Everyone was rejoicing, except one thing. It wasn't the guy. It wasn't the right guy. So there's so much that we don't know in regards to this case, so much. But I believe that the persons with their boots on the ground, the FBI investigators, the sheriff's department investigators, I believe they know a hell of a lot more than they have released. Well, where does that leave us? It leaves us as armchair detectives, just like armchair quarterbacks watching a football game. We're conjecturing, and you watch this man here, James Gagliano. Brilliant guy, FBI agent. I think it was for like 25 years. West Point graduate, studying for his PhD. He's baffled. He's baffled. So if he's baffled, what is the true crime community doing right now? Mike.
Yeah, Bill, at this time, we've had missing, you've had missing persons, Phil and I have had missing persons, and they need to be solved. very quickly, especially if it's just children or the elderly. In this case, if Mrs. Guthrie was, say, 45 years old and in great health, we'd feel slightly different. But being that she's like 85 and in poor health, that makes it that much worse, that much more scary and much more dangerous. But the weird thing is, any sort of abduction or kidnapping and holding somebody for ransom, it doesn't make sense for it to go on this long. There's no advantage for the perpetrators of this crime to hold her, especially in her frail health. If she's 25 or 45, that's different. You could wait out the authorities, whatever you want to do, play psych ops games. But in this case, there's no reason why this should go on that long. There's something else going on that we don't know, that law enforcement does, on the ground knows. But when it finally comes out, and I am sure it will come out soon, as Phil said, KISS, keep it simple. It will be something not as convoluted as you might think at this point, with all the delays and all the information, but it probably will be something fairly simple.
Let me just go over this. It's Zonk, but isn't her pacemaker and phone connection in the house with timestamps after midnight also proof of her being there? Yes, it is. That is proof, but we didn't say that she wasn't in there. We just said, how'd she get in there? How did she get in? What door did she enter to get in that house? That we don't know, and no one is acting like they do know. They're saying, they're taking for granted that, oh yes, she went through the garage door, but we're being told that there's no solid evidence of that. There's no video of that. There's the son-in-law saying, oh yes, I dropped off, she went through the garage.
It might be that the usual routine is to go through the garage, and they're taking that into account as well, I'm sure, Billy. And, the fact that they have the garage going up and down at a specific time. So that may be how they're corroborating what he's saying. And, like you said, we don't know 100% because unless there is a video of it, perhaps maybe today she said, you know what, I'm going to go in through the front door. I got my keys. We don't know.
Yeah, it's totally still baffling. Let me play this from News Nation. I think this.
He later just said it was a family member, but that's been a focus of the investigation, Elizabeth. I mean, I was telling you yesterday over the weekend, they were inside Annie's house, the detectives, taking photos. We could see the flashes coming out of the windows, and now they pretty much got the house surrounded, doing what appears to be this massive grid search.
All right, Brian Enton, thank you. Give us a holler if anything out there breaks. We'll bring you right back. In the meantime, let's bring in our law enforcement experts. Chris Swecker is a former assistant director of the FBI. John Iannarelli is a former special agent in charge of the FBI's Phoenix division. And Jeffrey Halstead is the retired police chief for Fort Worth, Texas, and a former commander in the Phoenix Police Department. Chris, I'm going to start with you.
So they got some pretty good heavyweights here. Mm-hmm. So there's, I don't know, maybe there's 90 years of police experience with these three, and 2 FBI guys and 1 former police chief. And the first guy, Zwecker, he's a bright guy. I've seen him. He's not everyone I watch on these TV stations and I call them talking heads knows what the hell they're talking about. That guy Zwecker absolutely does. James Gagliano absolutely does. There's people that if you check their resume, they did 10 years and 4 in the CIA and 5 in the FBI. And you're like, why is this person even commenting? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I just want to verify these guys all have great resumes.
There are several identifiable characteristics on the images on this front door camera. The suspect has wide eyes, very defined eyebrows. Some have called them manicured eyebrows. He has a possible mustache, a backpack, and a jacket. Someone somewhere will know who this is. And Chris, you say the clothing is distinctive, the backpack is distinctive, even the mannerisms, the way he walks.
I think so. I think there's enough characteristics here that someone that knew this person well, as we've seen in the past, would recognize them from the walk, from what they're wearing, the build. This person is in shape. He's not overweight. You don't see a belly there. Clothes are tight fitting. There's a backpack that's, as you said, that's fairly distinctive. And I think, the FBI is sort of fishing here
trying to get an identification off of what they've given us, but there may well be more. I think they'll give us enough to make an identification, and then they'll come back with more if they're not able to get an identification off of this. For example, there may be sound. There may be, we may have the footprints and know exactly what kind of shoe, because that's a dusty area there, and that lends itself to footprints. I just think there are other details that will be forthcoming, but I think there's enough there to make an identification.
John, the video shows this person slowly approach the door. They try and fail to block the camera, going back to pull up some plants to try and cover it that way. Does this look professional or purposeful or well planned to you?
We've seen this in a lot of cases where criminals think they're much smarter than everyone else. Obviously, this is not as professional as you would think somebody committing this type of crime would be. They would be aware of the presence of a Ring camera and have duct tape ready to cover it or spray paint. Here, they're sort of fumbling, looking for the way to mask the camera. They spent a lot of time at the residence, much longer than criminals who are professional normally would. I think the mistakes that this person is making is going to lead to their downfall. As Chris said, somebody out there knows who this person is going to tell law enforcement.
Yeah, going back to pick plants, and try and use plants to cover the doorbell camera seems very, very amateurish. I don't know, but that's just, what it looks like. Chief, whoever this is wearing very thick gloves, almost like ski gloves. Again, not what a practiced criminal might use.
No, you're exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up, because if you look at the holster, just the manner and where it's positioned.
The holster sticking in his front waistband.
Yeah, definitely not good. Right-handed. But even if they wanted to draw the weapon, they would have to unclub in order to fire the weapon, because those gloves are too thick to get into, the trigger guard that's on most weapons. And then it looks like it's a revolver holster, and they got like a small semi-auto tucked in there. But right, my colleagues are exactly right. This is great evidence. It's going to lead people to start thinking, is that so-and-so? And going to generate a lot more leads for this case. And then with the tactical units starting to mobilize, they're probably looking at potential leads that may try to make a run for it, because now their picture's on every television station in the world.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. Someone in the chat at Allie Brooks 0606, Sergeant Bill, good to see you. TMZ showed a new video of a man with a mask on trying to break into somebody else's house. That same night, Nancy went missing. I don't know. I just cannot trust things that TMZ put out there. I just don't. I mean, they've put so much out there. I stay away from what he puts up there now. Even the other day they had the guy that called in and said, "Oh, give me 1 Bitcoin. I know who did this." And of course that came from TMZ. Have we heard another word about that yet? No. So I'm having some credibility issues with them. So I just as soon as not go there. Phil, your thoughts with that?
Yeah, listen, I'm not even certain that this was a true bona fide kidnapping attempt at this point, because when we had the ransom demands, they never provided proof of life. I don't know. I'm just getting the feeling that this could be a possible home invasion that just went wrong. And for whatever reason, they removed Nancy Guthrie from the location. This guy strikes me as non-professional. I mean, how do you really define a professional? But he's like they were describing, he's bumbling around and he doesn't look like he's prepared for that camera. He grabs those weeds. There's another still photo of him that was taken from that video where he doesn't have the backpack on and he doesn't have the gun in his waist anymore. So that tells me that he went back to that location after he had taken the backpack off and removed that gun, and where it is, we don't know. So there's a lot of things here, and I'm not getting a strong feeling that this was an actual kidnapping. I can't come to grips with that. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they did have the intention of kidnapping her, sent the ransom demand. However, they weren't able to provide proof of life. That is one of the scenarios they could be. But like I've said couple of times already in previous podcasts, you have a goal. You kidnap someone. Your goal is to kidnap them, contact family, provide proof of life, and get a ransom. And none of those things took place. Yes, there was a kidnapping where the body was removed, the person was removed, And there was also contact. We know that there was fake contact. There was fake ransom demands where someone was arrested, but we never had the proof of life. And there was like no further contact after that once the deadline passed. So I'm not getting a strong feeling in that direction. And I really have a lot of faith in the investigators and the investigation that's taking place. As Mike said earlier, with regard to the Idaho case, everybody was talking about, well, this is a cold case within a week or two. And then 6 weeks later, Brian Kohlberger was placed into custody, and they had a very, very strong case against him where he wound up pleading guilty to life in jail without the possibility of ever seeing freedom. So I have a lot of faith in the case. Do we see some missteps? Yeah, we don't think the media should be up close as they are. We do think the crime scene could have been protected a little better in the early stages, but I have a lot of faith in the FBI and the current investigation.
Absolutely. At KMTX78, thank you for the $5 super sticker. With the missteps in this investigation, how much will some of this be able to hold up in court? I'm still amazed at them not taping off the scene, as I am, KMTX. And you're right. To all of these investigations, there's a part A, and that's the investigation and everything that happens. The part B is after there's an arrest and taking the case to court, which is a whole other Pandora's box of information. And if you do things wrong during the investigation, of course, attorneys are going to focus on that. And, the prosecution, of course, has to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, which we're not even anywhere near there. But the job of the defense is to create doubt. Right. So you're right. All of these things, all these missteps, if they are in fact missteps, all of these snafus, all of this misdirection here goes bad for the prosecution, goes bad for law enforcement. So, yeah, we're aware of all those things. But as I said earlier, and Phil just said, the Kohlberger case is a great case to cite because we watched that case from the very beginning, from November 13th, right till the end, which was just a couple of months ago where he finally pled guilty. But the press was calling it a cold case after only a couple of weeks. And we were saying, no, this is a complex case. And also, folks, if you look at the Kohlberger case, there was very little evidence, very little physical evidence. They didn't find any blood. They didn't find, I'm talking about in his car, that he didn't leave any evidence behind except he left that one critical piece of evidence, and that was his DNA on a knife sheath and on a K-bar knife sheath. Without that piece of evidence, I have serious doubts that they could have gotten him to plead guilty. He did plead guilty. He didn't take it to trial. Mike, your thoughts on that as compared to this case?
That was the shining example of what a great piece of, evidence that to really just not a slam dunk, I hate to say that word, but to really show pretty much beyond reasonable doubt. Jurors would love to hang their hat and vote guilty if they've got that objective evidence, like scientific evidence, and DNA goes a long way to convince a lot of people about the accuracy of the results and whether or not you got the right guy. And I'm thinking about this case here with the glove. Again, we talked about it earlier. If there's DNA in it, and if it is relevant to this case, it would be that as similarly valuable in this case. But as this goes on, I agree, with Phil. And I believe that the FBI is looking at this not only as a kidnapping, but also as perhaps if that video that TMZ may have, if it holds up and it is accurate and it is actually relevant in terms of time and date and location, if it does hold up, then it might show that maybe Ms. Guthrie was a victim of a home invasion, break-in burglary, and that she fought and they maybe removed her. Because you always think about this, if she passed away, what's the best way for a perpetrator? Because you got to think like a perp. What's the best way for a perp to who may be facing a homicide charge to not face a homicide charge?
Get rid of the body.
Exactly. And so I think Phil and me, I think we're on the same page. I bet you the FBI is thinking the same thing at this point. There's just too many other strange things going on with the Bitcoin and stuff like that. It might be a much simpler case.
Red herring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think at this point, and look, admittedly, we don't know everything. We don't have the information that the investigators have. This could be something other than a kidnapping because it is not the classic kidnapping. And after the 5 p.m. deadline on that Thursday, when there was no ransom paid and no proof of life and no communication with the kidnappers, I was a little bit, what now? That's what I thought right away. What now? Where do we go now? And then all of a sudden, the video of a perpetrator going to that front door on that Ring camera, I was thinking this case is going to be solved really quickly now, and it hasn't been. Back to News Nation.
Yeah, John, the FBI director said the video was recovered from residual data located in the back end systems. What does that mean exactly, and why did it take so long to get?
Well, the FBI was not immediately brought into this case. We have to be invited in, or there has to be a clear federal nexus. But once we were, this is what the FBI does. Residual data, even though you don't have a subscription to record data, does not mean it's on a server somewhere and that the FBI was able to look and pull out data that was in fact available. Also, now they can go back to other cameras in the area and look for similar residual data now that they know what the subject at least appears to be in physical presence.
Yeah, Chris, there are reports that Google actually helped recover the video, that they went, up to the very highest levels and said, you need to do this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the FBI does well is they have through their operational technology section, they have a relationship with most of the high-tech companies, almost all of them. And it's a long-standing relationship. So they're not strangers. I know they don't like to talk about it too much, and the tech companies don't either. But so the FBI has a way to go into these companies. If they don't know how to do something, they're going to get the technical help from the people that built it. And what better way to get in and do what they had to do here? This stuff, what happens when it's not saved is it's written over probably. And so they had to kind of scrape back layers of other things that have been layered on top of it. And, that takes some time. And as was just mentioned, the FBI got a late start here. I mean, the sheriff kind of stiff-armed them the first couple of days, and they were there in name only probably for a couple of days. So they got a late start.
John, there were reportedly other Nest cameras inside the home. Could this same sort of data be retrieved from those cameras that might show even more inside?
Absolutely. If the cameras were in operation, there's going to be information that can be recovered, as there can be from cameras in the area now. The good news is, as everyone's pointed out, we have a description. Somebody is going to recognize the distinctive person, distinctive clothing, and would not be surprised if tips have already been called in with this person's identity.
All right, we're looking at live shots right now outside Nancy Guthrie's home. We've got some officers there. I'm not sure what they're doing.
A question I have, and I'm going to throw it out there because really I could admit my bafflement with some of this stuff, and because clearly we don't have all the information. But could it be that the guy on the video with the holster and covering his face and rips the camera out, could he not be the kidnapper? If in fact there are kidnappers? Phil?
Very possible, Billy. I mean, there's so many scenarios here. We could, we could try to figure it out. And with the limited knowledge that we have from what's being, released to the media. But our experience is telling us that when we look at this guy, he doesn't look like he was prepared for that camera. It doesn't look like he was, he's described as bumbling. However, he did prepare by, putting on, looks like several layers of gloves, covering his body from head to toe, including the ski mask. And what's in the backpack? That seems to be baffling a lot of people too. Some of the people have described the backpack as having something of soft in it, let's say maybe bags or some type of a top or a blanket or something of that nature. And you would think if it was an actual kidnapping that was being planned, there would be some type of a covering for the person's head so they're not going to see where it is they're being taken. So a lot of questions remain, a lot of possibilities remain, and I think that if there is cameras within that home of the same nature, the Nest cameras, I think they're going to have very specific information from within that home, just like they were able to go on to the information from the front door camera. Then perhaps there is further video. And I did see a news media report where they're saying that further video is going to be released sometime today. So I think we are going to get some more video evidence. I don't think it's going to be from inside the home. There was another Nest camera taken from the roof of the location. Perhaps it's going to be from that. And Elizabeth Vargas said video camera within the home. I don't know if I've heard that before. I don't know if that's exactly true. So one of the things I just want to make a comment on one of the comments. It's G7599 says the DNA from the blood has not been matched to Nancy. That's not true. We've been told by law enforcement that in fact the blood is in fact Nancy's blood. So that I don't know where she got that from. If it's a female, G7599, perhaps you want to make another comment if you have further information on that. But we were told previously that in fact the blood droplets outside the front door of Nancy's home have been matched by DNA to Nancy.
Absolutely. At Nick Smith 6854, they said they're looking at multiple persons of interest. This guy looks to be like he is a diversion, not just to get Nancy's attention towards the front of the house, but also as a diversion for us, the public. You know, Nick, I wouldn't say you're incorrect because I don't know either, you know, and you could be right. I don't know. I really don't know. And you know something, you want to hear something? Neither does anyone else that's not in on this investigation, does not have boots on the ground, is not in the investigative meetings every day, is not exchanging all of the information that's in that case folder. I would imagine that case folder is guarded by a guy with a gun standing there, making sure no one grabs it or looks at it. Well, these days, most of the time it's on a computer, but it's top secret information. Mike, your thoughts also. I mean, we're talking about what is going on here, and it's very difficult. We can listen to a million talking heads. They all have different opinions, and not a single one of them can say this is what's going on. Mike.
Yeah, I've grown skeptical. Like Phil, I've grown very, very skeptical of this as being a straight up, kidnapping that went awry. What I think is the kidnapping is a misdirection itself. It's, Phil said, a red herring. And I think if that TMZ video holds up, this guy doesn't, a kidnapper coming in the front door, but walking around. I don't buy it. One level house. It's not a two-story house. With other access points, I don't see it. I think this guy is possibly a attempted burglar, home invader, but I don't see him as a kidnapper at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's I have the photos up on the screen right now of the road leading up to the house, of the house itself. It's quite a sprawling house. I don't know exactly how many square feet. I believe it's over 3,000, maybe even bigger than that. And so many probably entries and exits to this house. And that's why, early on in this investigation, when law enforcement said, oh, there was a forced entry, and then they walked that back. So is that true? Is that not true? Did she come through the garage? So it's changed up lots of times. And then, of course, the video of this person of interest, and that's what we'll call him here. I'll put that up on the screen. This person of interest. And we know law enforcement now is they're trying to find, where did that backpack come from? There's a brand name on it. Did he get it from a Walmart? Did he order it online? Those are investigative steps they have to take, quite voluminous to do that. Those gloves, what type of gloves are they? Where can you buy those gloves? Let's go see. Let's do a canvas of all the stores that sell them. Same thing with his attire, right? His jacket, it looks like almost like a fleece, right? His pants, everything that he's wearing, right? Let's look at that. The way he's carrying a gun, and most of us have never seen that before, having the holster of a gun between your legs as you walk up to a door. And Phil explained the other day that sometimes cops do that when they're sitting in a radio car so as to take the pressure of the gun stabbing them in the hip. They might put it between their legs, but No one walks with a gun like that. That's ridiculous. So where does that come from? And what a lot of people are saying is that someone that knows this guy, and we saw this in the Spencer and Monique Tepe case, the video of the person of interest walking from a car in the back of their house, and you couldn't ID him because he had a hoodie on, he had a mask. You couldn't. But look at his gait, the way he walks, his physicality, and by gait, I don't mean GATE. I mean GAIT. The way you move, your gait. And a lot of people, they knew right away. They told the police, that's Michael McKee. You know, people might see this video and say, that's so-and-so. I recognize it, the way he moves, his size, the way he holds. You heard the FBI agent say, he's in shape. Go to local gyms, see if this guy's pumping iron, if anyone knows him. All of those things are investigative checklist things that people may say, oh, how ridiculous, go to gym. What do you got to lose? Let's go there. Let's go to the people that own the gym, people that go to the gym every day. Do anyone recognize this guy? I'm sure you've seen this video. It's all over television. It's an investigative step. And yeah, try it out. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, you could just figure, let's start with even just DMV pictures. You talk about go to the gym. That's great. Also, go to DMV, go start whipping through those pictures. Males between the ages of, say, 25 and 35. Look for, block out somebody who's like 5'11" and over and taller, things like that. Figure out the age and the age range and start doing that. This is going to take, as you say, voluminous. It's a long time. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take hours and days, but eventually through several different sources, you may be able to narrow down who this possible suspect is. And then once you narrow on that, then you see who his associates are. But yeah, it's people don't realize it's not like TV where you get an hour show and there's 20 minutes of commercials and they ask for something, a phone dump, and they get it within like 3 minutes and they ask for this or that. Oh, within 12 hours, you've got your DNA match. No, that's not the way it works. But it takes a long time and a lot of patience. But they will catch this guy. I mean, once they get to this point, they're going to catch him, but it's going to take a while.
The other thing is, and then we're showing our age and the antiquated nature of our philosophy here, is that the FBI has much, much upgraded facial recognition technology, even technological advances that can ID his clothing by, enhanced photographs. But facial recognition, they can put his photograph, even though it's covered with a mask, his eyes even. How many people have eyes like that? Put it into facial recognition. So use technology, to help. And that's what the FBI is doing. But guess what? They've been doing it. And so far, they don't have a match yet. But they will use all the tools available to them. And not just, we call old-time, and jokingly we call old-time detectives gumshoes. And they used to call them that because they would wear out shoes pursuing leads. But now most of the work is done at your desk and on the telephone and on the computer screen and discussing and comparing evidence and using facial recognition and things like that. Technological advances, digital evidence, all of those things. We even thought that geofencing, the technology that can pull up all electronic devices in an area at a specific time, we thought for sure, oh, the FBI is going to pull that up. They're going to have someone in a day or two. Guess what? They still don't. We're in day 12. They still don't have a suspect, a person of interest. So this case has to be difficult because they are doing a full court press on this, and yet no one's in handcuffs. Phil.
Yeah, Bill, you're making such great points. We talked about earlier, previous shows, we talked about it when we have our conversations. There's no honor amongst thieves. The reward is not that much money. 50,000 might seem like a lot. $500,000 or $1 million. We've been calling for that. You will see that the phone will start ringing. I know that since they put this video out, there was over 4,000 calls or tips to the tip line. So I think that the right tip, might be generated by a large reward. There's one other thing that I have to address in the chat. This is really something that has to be addressed. This is by James Hamlet, S7X. You don't rob a house when someone is home. That's called a home invasion. That's 100% not true. And it says burglars don't bring weapons. Also not true. I responded to a burglary in 1986 where 2 police officers were shot. One of them killed, where they were burglars. They had picks. They were picking a lock, and they shot it out with police officers that tried to arrest them. So that is 100% not true.
First, Phil, first of all, the law, and I'll do this even though I'm stepping on Mike Geary's law expertise. A burglary is knowingly and unlawfully enter or remain in a building with intent to commit a crime therein. That is the definition. So if you go into a house with the intention of robbing it, you've also committed a burglary at the same exact time. A robbery is the forcible stealing of property. So you have to know the law before you make a statement. And I'm not trying to criticize you, but burglars absolutely, you know what the problem is? Politicians preach that burglary is not a violent crime. That is the most ridiculous statement they could ever make. Anyone that comes into your house while you're home has the intention of being as violent and killing you if they need to. So when you hear a politician say that, don't ever vote for that moron.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Billy. And to think that people are of the mindset that, when a burglar breaks into his house, he doesn't carry a gun. Not true. There's so many instances where, like you said, violence is committed. Sometimes a burglar doesn't know someone's home. And they enter into that house. Now they've committed a home invasion. So there's a lot of variables here that we don't know. Okay. But to say 100% that when burglaries are committed, they don't carry weapons, 100% not true.
From the chat at Gamma of 2, at Ed Wallace of Duty Run, Ed said earlier that the work the FBI did this morning with the tent should have been done on day one. Half-assed work was done at the very beginning. I agree with him. I 100% agree with him. And one of the problems was perhaps the arrogance of the local police thinking, we'll investigate this ourselves, not realizing how difficult of a case this was going to be. And they should have welcomed the FBI with open arms, realizing that they needed this expertise for an investigation of this depth, scope, and magnitude. And it's a difficult case. Mike.
Yeah, we've all seen crazy crime scenes out on the street, on rooftops, in buildings and lobbies, and they're dirty, they're filthy, they're compromised in many ways. And you got to try to do the best you can and make sure the chain of evidence, whatever you gather, is carefully followed. But there's no perfect crime scene except for the ones you see on TV, where people walk around in hairnets and booties, and they're stepping along, and it looks like it's like something Hollywood makes up. That's really not always the way things go. And so even if it was messed up, and this case was messed up in the beginning, whatever they can gather can also still be excellent evidence. But you're right, absolutely. There was a botch in the beginning, and sadly, you got to recover from that. And you don't know how much evidence now was destroyed that you could have gotten in addition to whatever you actually do get. And so that's absolutely right.
Mike and Phil, large police departments like the NYPD, like Boston, like LA, like Miami, like some of these, inner city, these Detroit, they have such experience dealing with major cases. And specifically, one of the biggest cases they deal with is murders. And you really, once you're an experienced homicide detective, you've seen almost everything, and you can investigate pretty much any crime. And those are the best guys you want working the case with you. But the FBI in a small place like this, Tucson, Arizona, right? A small town, they don't deal with things like this that often. So they really should have welcomed the FBI in. And like in the NYPD, we would definitely control the investigation, but we would welcome the FBI with their expertise and their toys and their money and all the personnel they could bring. And to not welcome them into a complex investigation like this is almost negligent. Phil.
Yes, absolutely, Billy. And I think that it was been stated that they haven't, that the FBI wasn't requested because they have to be requested until after 2 days into this investigation. And as you said, there may have been some butting of heads. We're going to handle it, but we need your assistance. But what Ed said, and I know Ed Wallace, I worked with Ed many years ago. He's correct. This should have been done a long time ago. I think what was done, though, had to do with the video being released. Now, the video was released, 2 days ago? So maybe it should have been done at least 2 days ago, where they're going to measure to try and see the height of the perpetrator. So someone's a little slow with that kind of a response, if that, in fact, is what was done. There's one other thing I have to address in the comments. It's by She Tim. It says, Phil, you need to rethink your armed burglary statement. 99% of burglars are not armed. Where did that statistic come from? How could you make such a statement? You don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say that every burglar is carrying a weapon. However, there are some that do. And I myself responded to a burglary where I said earlier, 2 police officers were shot, 1 was killed. So to make that kind of a statement, I don't think you know where you're coming from. And that's a statistic. I don't know where you got it from.
You know, Phil, in a famous burglary in New York City, an NYPD officer, and Chentucky, I think his name, and it was that actor.
Yes, Lilo Brancato.
Lilo Brancato was with
Yes.
another drug addict burglar, and
4-1, I think.
and yes, and the off-duty officer intervened and was killed during that. So much for you that burglars don't carry weapons, and especially if they're going in when they think people are home. Yeah, they're going to carry a weapon, And I blame this on politicians, because politicians have even tried to make the crime of burglary to preach that it's not a violent crime. They just want your money. They just want your property. So how is that violent? These morons that you vote for, how come they can even say something like that? Don't get me started. This is why I have to have Mike Geary here. Let me go back to News Nation for a bit.
They're at control room. Is this Nancy Guthrie's house or Annie Guthrie's house? It's Nancy Guthrie's house. So they're at the front door, obviously doing something. But, to your point, John, and then I want to turn to the chief for a couple questions. But, John, crowdsourcing works. It helped track down Luigi Mangione, he's about to go on trial for murdering the CEO of United Healthcare. Crowdsourcing helped track down Tyler Robinson, who is about to go on trial for murdering Charlie Kirk. And the images that we got from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera are much, much better than the images in those other 2 cases.
Absolutely. Not only the people in the general public who may have seen this person, family and friends are going to recognize the distinctive walk, the clothing, and they're going to do the right thing because that's what they have to do. And that's the lead that's going to bring this person down and hopefully recover Nancy.
Chief, the police went door to door in Annie Guthrie's neighborhood. What do you think they're doing? Brian Enton reported that they were telling people they were looking for something that was dropped. What do you think might be going on?
Yeah, they have new intelligence, so they have a new direction with this investigation. So they will go back to these areas and start canvassing the neighborhoods. Honestly, it would be absolutely amazing at going through these areas looking for something that could have been lost, a weapon that could have been dropped, something that was taken when it was dropped in a home as they walked away. But going through all of those other residences and their technologies may give us a clearer view of someone driving a vehicle days before with no mask on. And then this investigation is really going to speed up.
Chief, there are also reports that all of the people who were hired to work in some capacity at Nancy Guthrie's home are now being swabbed for DNA samples. Why would that happen now? Why didn't that?
Wow. We suggested that day one, that everyone that works for her should be interviewed, investigated, and they're just doing it now in day 12? You find something wrong with that, Phil?
Yeah, a little slow to the game, as we said, but perhaps they were interviewed and now they're going to the next step. I don't know what the events, how they're taking place, but yeah, listen, we called it from day one. We felt that this was going to be a crime that was started with regard to someone in her circle. When I mean by her circle, a worker, a friend, a relative. Someone had access to this woman's movements. I think that that's going to be clear. And they targeted her. There's no question about that. What that tells me is it's going to be someone from within her circle, maybe the inner circle, or maybe just on the peripheral of the circle. But I don't think that the perpetrators stuck a pin in a map and said, this is where we're going to commit a kidnapping, robbery, whatever it is. It was definitely a targeted attack, I believe. And you're going to find your answers from the people that were closest to her. That's what I feel at this point.
No, 100%. And look, I mean, we could talk about this all day and things that are done right, things that are done wrong. But again, inside this investigation, I firmly believe they have an investigation. They have a direction. They know where they're going, and they're working toward that. A lot of extraneous things that don't make sense to us, but we don't have the case folder. We do not know what's going on in the deep depth of this investigation. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, I think as Phil pointed out, the FBI would have liked to have probably gotten in there, and the cooperation of the Pima County Sheriff's Department and their investigators as soon as possible. Maybe there was a little political infighting, but this may be a case where things were missed early on, and protocols, FBI protocols on handling these sort of cases weren't followed because the FBI wasn't there. Pima County, as you say, doesn't really probably have that much kind of expertise in these hostage taking, kidnapping kind of things. So therefore, they got to go back and maybe redo what should have been done earlier. But yeah, in these sort of cases where someone is at home and whatever happens to them, you got to look at who has motive, who has opportunity, being there in the area, and who has the physical ability to carry this out. And so but you have to look at the family first, like the spokes of a wheel. You start at the hub and you move out farther. You go from the beginning family, and then as Phil said, you go to the employees, distant relatives, neighbors, people who can see that house physically, who've been there, workers, repairmen. We know that. And then you move farther out. And perhaps the FBI, and it's being done now, maybe they're redoing it, or maybe they're just getting around to it. But most likely Pima County, with its lack of experience, their sheriffs may not have understood that protocol, that proper protocol right off the bat.
100%. Everyone's asking for the Harvey 11 video. I'm going to try to put something up on the screen now just to satisfy the chat here with this.
The original letter. I believe you were the one who said, whoever wrote that letter, I don't think you used the word meticulous, but I'll use that word, suggesting that the grammar was right. The letter was very specific about the requests and the demands. Does this letter have the same form that you saw the first time around?
No, and I don't think this person is purporting to be that person. Okay. This person is purporting to be someone who probably wrote that first letter. If the FBI's operating theory is right, that they are going on the assumption that the person who wrote this note took Nancy. And so they're not saying they're the kidnappers. They're saying they know who the kidnapper is and will give that information up for 1 Bitcoin. And
okay.
Again, we looked at this address. It's a pretty bold thing that the address is real.
Okay. There were 2 other Arizona affiliates in Tucson, KGUN9 and another one. Did they also receive this same note? Or do you
I don't know. We haven't talked to them.
All right. Now,
we just, Bill, we've sent this on to the FBI already.
All right. So it's sort of very easy to check out. You give it to the FBI, they check it out. You don't have a story anymore, but I find it, this story in a lot of ways is being choreographed by the press of what is interesting, what is not interesting, what is the smoking gun, what direction. This is not a kidnapping. It is a kidnapping. It's a burglary. It's a family dispute. All of those things were being told, but yet only the persons that are working this case, that are inside this investigation. Again, this was the subject. Is this the smoking gun, the glove that they found in the field? It may be, but it may not be anything. It may be zero. It may have zero to do with this case. But we're sort of, as I said, the media is choreographing where we're going with this case. And there's only a select group of people that actually know what the hell is going on inside this case, and those are FBI agents and the local police, sheriff's department, knows what is actually going on and what direction they're going in. And we're saying 12 days since Nancy Guthrie was taken. I mean, in a lot of cases, not a long time. It's a long time because this is an 84-year-old woman who's missing, who needs medication, who's not the healthiest person on earth. So, yeah, we worry about her. We would like to see her returned and returned alive. Phil.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Billy. There's definitely direction in this case. A lot of things are being done. I think what we're seeing through the media is a lot of the dotting the I, crossing the T, and then they did a search and they see a glove on the side of the road. I mean, it would be remiss if they didn't treat it as possible evidence. I saw a map today earlier showing a main road that kind of comes out of the area where Nancy Guthrie lives, and they went to the left of it and they searched to the right of it, and that's how they came up with this glove that was discarded on the side of the road. Now the thinking is perhaps when the perpetrators are leaving the area, takes off the glove and throws it out the window. Possibly it could be, but there are many people, many contractors, mechanics, a lot of different people, and even law enforcement that utilize these type of gloves. And perhaps it could have fallen out of someone's back pocket, or it could have been thrown out. So we won't know until the examination is fully done on it. Could it be a smoking gun? If we have a perpetrator and they get his DNA and that DNA is on that glove and we can match it to the video that we saw, then yes, by all means, 100%, it will be a smoking gun piece of evidence. And I will even compare it to something as powerful as the knife sheath that was left behind in the Brian Kohlberger case, in the Idaho 4 case. So we don't know what it is at this point. But again, I'm going to stress, in my heart of hearts, I do believe that the investigation is going in a direction. Hopefully it's going in the right direction. And a lot of things have to be followed up. And I think that's what we're seeing, the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's. And with all the tips that are coming in, it's coming upon law enforcement to check out those tips, because we talked about it earlier. Later on down the line, a defense attorney can say, well, my client that you have here, and he's arrested and charged with all these things, but you had information there was this other guy and you didn't look at it. Is that the real perpetrator? We don't want anything like that to happen. So what they do is they take the tips, they decide what tips they think are most credible, and they try to work on those first. But at some point, all of those tips have to be looked at and maybe discovered to see if they're relative to this investigation.
100%, Phil. You know, a lot of people in the chat were telling me about this other guy that was seen jumping the wall with a backpack, and it was from TMZ. I looked for it. I couldn't bring it up. I was going to show it. But again, that's coming from a TV station, again, in this case, TMZ. Many people probably on other podcasts have showed it. I wasn't able to pull it up. But
Bill, I'm sure the FBI will be able to compare whatever that video is with the video that we have and see if it is in fact the same person. I don't think that's going to be too difficult.
No, I don't think it would be. But I would, here's Barbara at Barbara Hedberg -QD3KM. A reward for her mom, but the FBI put up 50,000. But what we were saying, Barbie, is that that's not enough.
No,
that's not enough to really get the criminal element in the area talking. 100,000, 200,000, 250, $500,000. Then you got people talking, right? 50,000, and the fact that the FBI put it up, criminals aren't going to trust them. Oh, how do I know I'm going to give them the information? They're not going to give me the money. So there has to be some private funds put up. I'm surprised NBC, who is the employer of Savannah Guthrie, doesn't put up, a substantial reward. I'm not going to suggest an amount. I think that would help to get more information forward in this case. But right now, it's only $50,000, and that's from the FBI.
Bill, you would think that with the family was willing to part with $6 million, that at this point, putting up, and I said it yesterday on yesterday's show, the parameters can be set by the family. We want our mother brought back to us. We want our mother recovered. Here's $1 million reward, or whatever it is. for the person that can provide the information that leads us to the recovery of our mom. That's what I think should be out there. We said it numerous times. There's no honor amongst thieves, and perhaps someone very closely related to this incident can provide that information, especially when you're talking about life-changing money. $50,000 to me and most people is not going to be life-changing. However, $500,000, $1 million could change a person's life, and maybe, provide them the information that we need in this case.
100%. Well, folks, I think we've come to the end of our discussion, and there's a lot of new things, yet there isn't that many new things. Today's topic was that black glove, which we've been led to believe is the smoking gun, is going to break this case wide open. And maybe it will. But something? Maybe it won't. And they're going to have to keep moving forward. Professor Mike, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for being in the chat. It's been a fantastic chat today. It's really excellent. I've been reading as much as I can, so thank you. But just ask people, don't believe everything you hear in the media, because just because it's they put it out there with an idea doesn't mean it's actually based in any kind of law enforcement experience whatsoever. They could just throw things out there, hoping you'll click on it and say, okay, well, let me look at this. Oh, TMZ said this, or NBC said that, or whatever. Don't always believe what the major media outlets are putting out there, because a lot of times they are very wrong.
I think you're right, Mike. And, we try to be as accurate and as forthcoming and on the level as we possibly can be. Mudcat 7611. I don't want to label it as being lazy, but has law enforcement become too reliable on video technology to not cordon off a crime scene too important for security? Mudcat, we agree that there were some mistakes made in regards to protecting this crime scene. Big mistakes. And many times when you make these mistakes, you only get one chance to do it right, and they can't make it right. Let's hope they can still solve this case, even with all the crime scene mistakes that occurred in the beginning. Phil, your final thoughts. People want to hear straight out of Brooklyn's retort on this.
Well, I have to piggyback Sergeant Mike's words. I think the chat today, there was a lot of great questions. I always look forward to that. I like to be challenged on some of the things that I say, because then I can further cement my opinion based on what my experience has been over the years in law enforcement. A couple of things that I think need to be done immediately, if not sooner. We talked about the reward just now. I think that's of so much importance. And the second thing is, give us an update. We need a public information officer to come out, give us some type of an update. I mean, I don't think they need an update every hour of every day, but it's been over a week. Let's get an update. Let's give people an idea of where this investigation is going. I know the family's probably being an update, but I think it would prevent a lot of the noise that we're hearing, a lot of the conspiracy theories. And the last thing I'm going to say is, obviously, thoughts and prayers for the successful recovery of Nancy Guthrie. I can't even imagine what that family's going through. There's not one victim in this case, Nancy Guthrie. There's that family as well. They must be heartbroken. They must be super, super stressed. And I just hope and pray that we can get a successful conclusion sooner rather than later.
You said it very well, Phil. And folks, again, to echo what my two compadres here said, that's the only Spanish word I know. The chat was fantastic today. We have some really knowledgeable people, some really plugged in people, and some really interested and good people in our chat. And I'm thrilled to have you guys. And I can't comment or highlight every single comment, but I try to put as many as I can up on the screen without it sort of derailing our direction in the show. But anyway, on behalf of myself, Bill Cannon, Professor Mike Geary, and straight out of Brooklyn, Detective Phil Grimaldi, thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.